Liquor store employees of Reddit, what is the craziest instance of underage kids trying to get booze you've ever encountered? I had a guy come in to try to buy booze with an absolutely terrible fake tattoo. Tattoos and alcohol have the same age restrictions here. I'm guessing you thought that if he had massive tribal tattoos done on his arm, we would just assume that he was old enough. He's clearly done them with a felt tip pen, but it was a hot day, so the sweat was making it drip down his arm. Two guys tried to buy beer. I asked them for an ID, they gave me their actual IDs. Like a vertical ID that had the date of birth clearly making them under 18. When I told them no, they were like, really man, can't you just be cool? Like their whole strategy was to hope that the clerk would just be a cool guy. Hey, at least they were honest. Not really crazy, but he came to the counter with a bottle of something. I asked him for an ID, his reply was something like, is this how you treat all your customers? In some kind of tone, like it was insulting to ask for an ID. I said yes. We both kind of stood there for a few moments and he asked if I wasn't going to sell him anything. Not without an ID, and then he walked out. I used to work at a bar. A girl came in and gave me an ID. I asked if it was hers. She said yes. What she didn't realize is that the purse she stole the day before and the ID she was now using belonged to one of the other bartenders. Calling her over to, look at this, was a satisfaction I haven't felt before or since. I used to do this when I was 17, age is 19 here. Trick was when asked, just confidently pull it out and show them. Worked about half the time, especially at busy stores. In college I worked at a liquor and beer place adjacent to a grocery store. Lots of regulars and people from the neighborhood. For several weeks I had been serving this one guy. Pleasant, polite, early 20s, 64, maybe 260 pounds. One day after he left, this older dude who was in line came up to the counter and said, you know that kid is only 16, right? I couldn't believe it. Apparently he rotates from store to store until he gets caught. Sure enough, next time he came and I asked for an ID. He just said goddammit and stormed out of the store. At the gas station I worked at, this kid walks in. No way he's more than 16. He heads straight to the beer cooler as my co-workers and I stare incredulously. He grabs a 12-pack and as he's approaching the counter, I ask, can I see your ID? He looks me in the eye, says nope, drops a 20 on the counter and walks out. We weren't sure what to do after that because he didn't exactly steal anything, but we also couldn't just accept the money because that would be selling to a minor. I left it for my boss to figure out. Here's an opposite one. I carded a guy once because I thought he was underage. He laughed this dejected laugh and gave me his ID, which was real after careful inspection. He was about 10 years older than me. A living breathing manchild. I work at a bottle store in Australia. Not long ago we had a bunch of kids about 13 to 15 years old come in and start stealing bottles of spirits. We had a security guard at the time was about 6'3" and 150 kilograms. These kids were swearing at him and running in like they wanted to fight. Crazy little bastards they were. Worked at a liquor store right outside of the university I was attending. Had a dude come in, had to be like 18 or 19. He comes up and gives me the idea of a guy I grew up with. I just started laughing. Not a liquor store employee, but a tale from the other side of the counter. When I was a teenager back in the 80s I used to buy all the time by just confidently walking up to the counter and handing the guy my ID when he asked for it, even though I was just 19 and the drinking age was 21. This was back before they had underage IDs with the different backgrounds. The funny thing was, it only worked if the cashier was male. If the cashier was a woman, she'd invariably look at me with disgust and tell me I wasn't old enough and to leave. If the clerk was a guy, he'd invariably stare at my ID and you could just see the wheels in his head turning as he tried to do the math until he'd just ring it up and gave me my ID back. I did that for at least 3 years until I turned 21. Not a liquor store employee, but I was purchasing something at a liquor store. These two young women were checking out the same time as me and proceeded to have the following loud interaction. They try to pay. The cashier asks for ID. The girl paying says she doesn't have any on her. The cashier is like, well, I need an ID, a license, a passport, something. The girl says, well, I'm 19. We are in the US, the drinking age everywhere is 21. This is next level stupidity.